Hi, everybody. Welcome to NewsNite for Friday, September 30th. Great to have you along this week. We'll begin in Columbus, where the debate continues between the GOP and the Democrats over the new statehouse districts. Are they fair? Plus, the law has now changed on where you can take a gun. Will local bars and restaurants allow you to bring them inside? And the debate over what are pants, what are jeans when it comes to the Akron Public Schools, and should some kids be sitting in suspension instead of the classroom? Those stories and more next on NewsNite. Awful lot to get to this week, and great to have you along for it, so let's get to it. Great to have with us Steve Hoffman from the Akron Beacon-Journal this week. Also great to welcome Stephanie Warsmith, also from the Akron Beacon-Journal. And Larry States from WAKR rounds out our panel this week. Okay, we knew the GOP was in control. We knew the Democrats would complain, but did we think it would be this divided?
I think what we've had now with the congressional districts and now with the legislative districts, redrawing of legislative districts, is a push to the extreme. In past decades, there's been some moderation shown by the party in power, in large part because they figure, well, we'll be around, or we're likely to be around 10 years from now when this process happens again, so we don't want to go too far. This time, nobody seems to care about 10 years from now. They care about right now. And they've, the Republican Apportionment Board, which is controlled by statewide office holders who are all Republicans. There was one Democrat on the board, Armand Budish, the House Minority Leader, who was easily outvoted by the four others. They've really created districts that tilt very, very heavily toward Republicans, toward keeping a Republican majority. And it's likely it would take a huge tsunami-like event in favor of the Democrats all across the state to come anywhere near a Democratic majority in the Ohio House.
Have they gone too far, Larry?
I think they have, and I think that even some Republicans and Democrats and Republicans are saying, you know what, we may need to change the way we do this. Matter of fact, John Husted was one of those who's saying, you know what, maybe this was a little bit extreme. And I've talked to both Democrats and Republicans, both, who think that they need to change this and have a bipartisan commission that is made up of, like 7 members or something like this that is bipartisan and does not, is not controlled by one party or the other. And when this idea is coming from both parties, that tells you that it's too extreme, that they're looking at this and saying, what did we do?
Yeah, we should note that John Husted is Secretary of State and a Republican, yes. And he's taken some heat from his own party for even thinking of this. He tried in the last legislative session when he was a state senator to get this done. Couldn't get it done. Democrats didn't want to work with him. Now the Democrats find out, guess what? Oops. Maybe we should have listened to John Husted.
He said that, too. He said maybe back then they should have listened to what I had to say, and then we wouldn't be in this mess right now. So now he's saying, I told you so, and right now the Democrats are listening, and I think they did realize they made a mistake by not voting on it then.
Yeah, but to the average voter, Stephanie, do you think they're paying a closer attention because of things like Senate Bill 5 now that affects so many people?
I highly doubt it.
Still?
I think, they will figure out right before they need to which district they're in, and that's probably when they're going to be paying attention. But I think they are hearing the constant bickering that is continuing, the continued divisiveness. And, Steve talked about this in his column that he had in the paper yesterday, that we are legislating by referendum now. The Democrats don't like what the Republicans do, so they go out and they get, signatures, and then they try to change it and turn it around. And so I think that, if anything, in terms of the voters, that they're just tired of the fact that, the politicians, both on the federal and state level, can't seem to work together to come to, any kind of solution on anything right now.
It's hard for voters to understand the intricacies of how these districts are drawn. What they do understand, as Stephanie's saying, is this does contribute to gridlock. And the way it contributes to gridlock is you get safe districts for both sides. And in a safe district, the primary is the key election, not the general. So you get people who are pushed, especially Republicans right now, since they have the majorities, they get pushed to the extreme of their own party in a primary. And so they're just not much, they're much more concerned about somebody trying to outflank them to the right. And so you get these extreme measures, push, and then, as Stephanie's saying, as I said in my column, the counterattack by the poor Democrats who are so isolated is to go to the ballot. So we end up like California. We're just going to take everything to the ballot. And it's very expensive, and it also is very divisive. It just reignites the debate over and over and over again.
Right, and you end up with, I know we're going to talk about this later, but the fact that early voting is going to start on Tuesday, if they have enough signatures to get the referendum on the ballot that would take away the bill that decrease that early voting period. I mean, how is that a good idea? To legislate that way.
And, look at this too. If ever voters needed to be informed, it's now with all these, ballot issues coming at them. There's going to be more of these. This is just the beginning. But if you talk to most voters, they don't really decide until a day before the election or whatever, though they say, okay, I've got to take a cram course here and find out what am I voting on. Most people are so busy in their lives, they don't dwell on this until a day or two before the election.
And you're going to have millions of dollars spent on the two ballot issues that are going to be on this November, the collective bargaining and the health care, which the health care is really the Republicans' counter to the Democrats' issue on collective bargaining and Senate Bill 5. And so how is that productive? The fact that millions of dollars are going into this, I mean, what could that money be better spent on?
So does it matter who's sitting in the governor's chair? I mean, honestly, if the partisanship is going to stay this way and continue to be cyclical, does it matter which party holds the State House?
No, but whatever party holds the State House, the other party is going to be taking shots at them, and the voters are going to be upset because, once again, as Steve mentioned, you're going to have this gridlock, and people are not going to be, satisfied with that. Now, going to a national level, it's no surprise that Congress has a 12% approval rating. The state legislature here in Ohio probably has a similar approval rating. Most people are just fed up with all of the positioning and the politicking and everything like that. They just want things done. They want basic. They look at their lives and they say, why can't we get these things done? We have to do these on a daily basis and make decisions. Why can't our lawmakers do the same thing?
The early voting, Larry, walk us through what is happening with that, because I think we've all become so accustomed, at least since 2008, of early voting was going to start 30 days, 45 days, whatever it is. Why would there be a change anyway?
Well, that's because the Republicans wanted the change. They thought that, this favors them again. If they can make it more difficult for poor people to vote, or they can make it more difficult for people to have the proper ID, the proper registration, that type of thing, they think they'll discourage those voters. And the Republican voters, they think, are going to be ready and ready to go.
That's what the Democrats will claim as their intention. But what are they saying are the reasons they're doing it? To save money? What are they doing?
Yes, that's the big argument, to save money. We've heard that locally with the local elections board here, also on the statewide level, to save money. But, at the same time, the Democrats realize, it's saving money, but it's also hurting us. So then you have that catch-22 situation again. And then you have the Republicans accusing the Democrats, well, you don't care if it's costing us that much more, to have these early elections. You just want it because, you're going to get more votes from people that are going to vote for you. So once again, we're back to that argument again. The Republicans say it costs too much. The Democrats say, well, it's a necessary expense because we don't want to be shut out.
Yeah, House Bill 194 made many, many changes to Ohio election law. And originally, I think some of the thinking was we need some uniformity around early voting. And there was a very difficult 5-day overlap period where you could come in and register and cast an absentee ballot in person at the same time. So there was some movement to fix things, but what the Republicans ended up doing is before, with under House Bill 194, early voting would start 17 days before the election instead of 35. And that got the Democrats very upset, and it was definitely, to me, an effort at voter suppression. People looked at 2008 and the wave for Obama, and they said, we don't want, the Republicans, they said, we don't want it. But with this referendum, with the filing of these signatures, we're back to the old law, and we will probably stay under the old 35-day deadline through November of 2012, at which point we'll have another referendum on House Bill 194.
But why, to play devil's advocate, why wouldn't 17 days be enough? If people really want to vote, 17 days plus the election itself, plus mail-in absentees, why isn't that enough?
Well, that's interesting. The Democrats say that people need more time. I don't know. Is that true? I mean, if you really split it down the middle, what difference does that really make?
Well, 30% of the vote in 2008 was cast early. And the Democrats seem to think that favored them. They're pretty sure it favored them.
Yes. I mean, if you look at the numbers, the early voting does tend to favor the Democrats. But, it's a nice convenience for people. I know some states, they actually vote by mail. So it is a less expensive way to vote. What is the magic number? I'm not quite sure what the magic number is, but this is another example of that partisan divide. And the Republicans say early voting helps the Democrats, so we don't want it.
I want to talk about the divide now as we shift the conversation to the internet and newsnight.net.
For more NewsNight content, including extended discussions, full interviews, and the chance to speak your mind about the issues, join us online at newsnight.net.
The law is now changing when it comes to concealed carry across Ohio. While you could get your license and carry your gun, there were a lot of places you couldn't take it. Now, guys, restaurants, bars, and a few others can allow you if they want. Let's just start with the businesses themselves. Do you think more in Akron, the Akron area, will allow people to carry a gun?
I'll tell you what, they can put up a sign telling you not to bring a gun into their establishment. I think if they're wise, that's what they do. They say that you're not allowed to drink when you bring the gun in. If if you have a concealed carry, you're not allowed to drink in the bar. Well, what are you doing in the bar in the first place unless you're going to get a drink? You're going to sit there and watch everybody else drink? I don't think so. So I think, how do you enforce that? You're going to have a security guard there. You're going to have another police officer there. How are you going to enforce somebody coming in with a concealed carry weapon not drinking? I just don't know how you enforce that law. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, I think this whole debate we've had is, again, it's another example of the politics of the extreme. The NRA loves these kind of measures. They have a willing group to work with in the Ohio legislature. These Republicans, as I kind of made fun of this week, but from smaller towns and rural areas, they love their guns. They're more than happy to push these kind of measures. Practically speaking, I don't think it really makes anybody safer. I really don't. If anything, if I were a police officer, and the many police organizations were not happy with this, if you're a law enforcement officer, do you really? I don't care. I'm with Larry on this. I don't care what the sign says on the door. And my guess is a lot of establishments are going to post a sign: "Don't bring your gun."
A lot of them have it up already.
Yeah. Do you really want to go in to break up a bar fight where you're really not sure who's got a gun and who isn't, who doesn't? It just.
Are you worried about the alcohol playing a role in creating these fights or making it more likely?
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, that's going to cloud your judgment, and maybe you might be a very mild-mannered, law-abiding citizen when you go in with a gun. But if you get a few drinks in you, get a little inebriated, and somebody says something that you don't agree with or gets you angry, where are the inhibitions that you normally would have?
But we haven't seen those cases. I mean, we haven't seen this in alcohol, but we haven't, across Ohio these first few years, seen those cases, with the exception of a few cases, the Matthew Warmus case and a few others, where somebody with a license who was carrying got in an argument and went too far with it.
That's because of the screening process. I do think they've done a pretty decent job with that, with the screening process for people getting these guns. Once again, if somebody's going to get a gun to commit a crime, they're not going to go through this process, the concealed carry process. I mean, they're going to go outside the law, and everybody knows
the guy
that.
in Copley did, right?
Yes, he did. Okay, now, but if you those are the exceptions, though. I mean, he had no criminal history, had no past history. So how do you predict, well, this guy's going to get this gun and something's going to happen? I mean, they didn't look at his strange behavior. They didn't call in a psychiatrist, and he had exhibited strange behavior before. And but at the same time, how do you predict that?
Right.
I will say neither have we. I agree with you. There have been a few highly publicized instances. That incident up in Cleveland in the parking lot was really sad. 2 concealed carry permit holders. Probably would have been a fist fight, as I've said a million times otherwise, but again, it ends up being a fatality. On the other hand, I will say the gun advocates saying that somehow we need to have our weapons to protect our families, and I don't think there have been, at least I can't remember, any incidents where someone, a concealed carry permit holder and his or her family has been threatened in the Walmart parking lot and has bravely defended themselves against mayhem. I mean, the idea of citizens doing that sort of thing, I mean, to me is ridiculous. I mean, you open fire, yes, you have a permit, but you're not trained. This is why we have police forces. This is why you call 911. You get somebody on the scene who knows what they're doing.
The argument is not, you don't see them you see somebody who didn't have one who gets assaulted, and people are like, well, if they had been carrying, they could have defended themselves.
Yeah, or they may have been shot dead too.
This is true. But in regards to this law change, if there are restaurants and bars that allow guns to come in, will it affect the patrons? In other words, would you avoid going there just knowing that some of the other people at the tables might have guns?
I probably wouldn't know. I'd probably go into the restaurant and bar. If it's a concealed carry, they're not allowed to, wear it where you can see it. I probably wouldn't even know they had a gun.
Larry State's Cafe makes the front page of the Beacon Journal and says, yes, you got your gun, you got your license, come on in. Would you not eat there anymore because you're fearful that some of the other patrons are armed?
Well, that might attract the people who are the gun advocates who might want to go there. I know my father was a smokers' rights advocate before they passed the, smoking ban. He had a restaurant and bar down in the Columbus area, and he attracted other people who were like-minded, who were also smokers and smokers' rights advocates. So maybe if somebody did come out as being a, we welcome you and your guns guy, then he's going to do well with that crowd.
Well, you know what? If I were a bad guy and I knew that a lot of people were packing inside this restaurant, I don't think I'd try to rob the place. It's like going into a bar or going into a place where the cops frequent, and you decide to go in there. We've all seen the movies, where and they all draw like 50 guns on you like that. I mean, I don't know if I were someone who wanted to rob a place, if I'd go into a place like that, if I knew that they were, allowed to carry in there, I think I would avoid that.
On the other hand, you might have families who decide to go out to get a hamburger, and Dad wants to get a beer, Mom wants to get a glass of wine, and they think, I think we're going to stay away from the saloon that has people armed to the teeth. Maybe we got the kids with us. We just want to go out and get a burger and a beer.
Well, I know I'm going to be going out for my birthday this weekend, and I'm not planning
Happy
to.
birthday.
Oh, thank you. But I'm not planning to look, for the sign before I go in and wherever we go and decide if I want to eat there.
I know that I'm very comfortable around firearms from the military, and I've sat in a chow hall with 1,000 guys who are all armed, and our rifles are right next to our plates of breakfast. It's never been a problem. But in the civilian world, I'm interested to see how this is going to play out, because I've been pleasantly surprised that we haven't seen the incidents over the last few years with people getting their licenses and then getting an we didn't see the shootout in the middle of the street that some had feared. So I'm interested to see how this is going to play out and how it affects the businesses that are out there. We do have a few minutes left in this segment. Larry, I want you to touch on a story you wrote about in regards to copper thieves affecting actual home sales.
It's become a really, really big problem, especially in the urban areas, in the inner cities. And I talked to the incoming president of the Akron Area Board of Realtors, Allie Whitley, about this, and she even had a personal experience herself. Her grandmother lives in another state, but her grandmother put her house up for sale, and they stole the copper coils, condensing coils out of the air conditioning unit. I mean, so it's really become a problem. And what these thieves are doing, they're going in, and they are actually cutting the pipes out with the water still running, connected. Then the basements are flooding. You've got a lot of damage there. And people just have to be a lot more vigilant when they put a house up for sale. Need to get their neighbors involved, need to have lights on a timer, maybe encourage your neighbor to park a car in the driveway, anything to try to prevent that, because it's a real problem. And that's because of the soaring price of copper and metal right now. These thieves decide they can go in and make a big score by ripping the copper pipes out of the house, and it causes so much damage, delays the sale of that home. Maybe it doesn't sell at all because of the delay and the repairs that have to be made. So it's become a bigger and bigger problem for home sellers and buyers.
You're finding it's actually affecting sales?
It has affected some sales, especially in foreclosed homes are targeted. Homes that have been vacant for like over a month or so. These people seem to know what to look for when they go cruising these neighborhoods, with these homes. And the only thing you can do is try to make the house look like it's lived in, which most people don't, and that's the problem.
We'll see what happens with the sales. I know we've been talking about siding being taken and copper being taken. I need to mention that Jody Miller referenced our gun discussion a few moments ago. We'll have a special tonight at 10 o'clock where she'll walk you through what it takes to get a concealed carry license and what she learned through the whole experience. That's tonight at 10 right here, a little bit after NewsNite.
On NewsNite.net, we cover a broader range of topics than we can on the air in 27 minutes. Be part of the conversation on our Facebook page and at NewsNite.net.
4 years ago, we spent an awful lot of time in this program debating the Akron Public Schools plan for a dress code. What's old is new again, guys, because we're right back there. The debate this time has to do with what is jean-like, because jeans are outlawed, but jean-like seems to be this gray area. And in this year's school clothes at the local stores, they put out Dockers that had rivets on them with the other school clothes, inner city parents buying them, and little Susie and Sally end up in detention. Have we lost our minds here a little bit?
I thought I knew what jeans were. I really did, And I would think jeans-like would be, pants that look like they're denim. Exactly. That would be my guess, but evidently I'm wrong about that. And as a parent who will have a child next year in Akron Public Schools, I guess I need to, figure this out before I go school shopping for.
They've been trying to win one victory, and that is making sure that the boys don't wear their pants down almost to their knees. Okay, they passed a rule for that where some of the principals had these ties in their office. They'd bring the kids in and they would tie the jeans up to their belt, make sure that they couldn't pull them down again. And so they won that battle. Now we have another one that's coming up with this, and. The fashion industry is always going to try to find something that looks different, and everybody's going to say, wow, I'd like to have that. That's different. That's new. Well, they decided to take what are basically khakis and put rivets on them on the outside, okay, to make them look like jeans. And why, who knows. But at the same time, it's the look, I think, that they don't like. It's the look that they don't like, okay? Now, does that mean the kid's going to learn any differently? Maybe not. Probably not, okay? They're more worried about what he's wearing than what they're learning. But we brought up a good point we were discussing before. Then a lot of these are inner city kids. And you're just fortunate that they're in the classroom, that they're attending school and not out somewhere, AWOL from school. So I don't know. I think we're getting a little bit petty in this argument. If they look neat, okay, if they look a bit dressy and they don't look like they're faded and stained and have holes in them and everything like that, what's the problem? That's my question. If they look neat and they don't draw attention for not looking that way, a couple of rivets. I mean, is that going to make that much difference?
Yeah, I have mixed emotions about the whole dress code concept, uniforms. Surely you want children not to be a distraction to others. I understand that. But it is a difficult thing to implement. I think they need to get this behind them quickly, resolve this, in a uniform way and move on quickly. A uniform way. No pun intended, yeah. On the other hand, I'm not sure what the real correlation is between proper dress and academic success. I tend to put much more emphasis on other factors like parental involvement, effective teaching methods, keeping veteran teachers in place, not laying everybody off, that sort of thing, than I do. And also, as Larry's alluding to, just, butts in a chair. I mean, if the kid's not in the chair for whatever reason, that's not a good thing. They're not learning. So fix it.
Are the parents caught in the middle, though, because they only have so much money in this economy to buy new school clothes? They bought those clothes. Can't take them back.
Right, and they might have been cheaper. They might have made the price attractive, or they bought them and said, you know what, this looks pretty good. It's the right price, so I'm going to get it. It fits my budget, okay, so to speak. Why would the district want them to take them back and try to? I don't understand. Unless they're so distracting to other students. Have they proven that? I don't think they have. I think they have.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it can be difficult for both a parent and child. I remember when I was in middle school, and I wore culottes to school, which my mom had bought me, and they decided that they were too short. They were just a little too high above my knee, and I had to go home, and it was very upsetting. I cried the entire way home. So, I just hate to think that, we were talking about it before, kindergartners or first graders, are getting in trouble for this, and, their parents think that they're doing the right thing. They think they're doing the right thing, and I agree with Steve. I think they need to figure this out and put it behind them.
Board Vice President Jason Haas was quoted in the Beacon Journal saying, we're not reopening the debate on uniforms, or the dress code, I guess it is, in the Akron Public Schools. We've had it for 3 years now. But should we reopen this debate on whether it's really making an impact?
Well, yeah, so somebody should take a look at it and say, has there been an improvement in the behavior of the students? Has there been an improvement in the learning ability of the students because they're not so distracted, by each other's clothing? I mean, compare it with the schools that do have uniforms, okay? What's the, have things improved, in those schools versus the ones that have the dress code, where they're supposed to be dressing better? I mean, do some comparison. I think they should.
Right, you've got to balance in here. I mean, if you have a number of students who are being suspended because they're not dressed properly, that is obviously going to affect the overall academic performance of the district as well. So, there are trade-offs here. Again, you need to have, I think, something that's simple, something that deals with the extremes, and just, don't make this too complicated.
One of the arguments that Linda Kersker and others made when this policy came in was we're preparing them for the real world, we're preparing them for college. So would you consider doing this at the high school level? Because those are the students that are closest to the real world in college, and they're not held to a dress code.
Right. I remember we were talking about this earlier too. I remember when they did the dress code initially and they talked about doing it in K through 8, there was discussion that at some point they would then make it go into the high schools. Now, whether that's still the plan or not, I don't know.
Isn't that where you're seeing the pants on the ground so much, Larry?
Well, more middle school than high school.
middle school, okay.
Middle schools were a really big problem. My wife worked as a secretary in one of them, and that was a constant problem. And they had to constantly call these, young men to the office and make sure that their jeans were hitched up or whatever they were wearing that day were at the right level. And so it was the middle schools. And then, of course, getting into the high school level, of course, I don't know how they police it there, but they were really trying to police it in the middle school level because that was the most problematic.
I still think if you're preparing them for high school or preparing them for college, that high schools are going to be where it's at. But I'll be interested to see how this dress code does play out when we do an apples-to-apples comparison over some years. We've got about a minute left. The Akron schools still have a levy. Isn't that where they should be spending most of their hours right now?
I think you're going to see, obviously, a campaign, an effort here. It's going to be a very, very tough sell. There's some other school issues out there this year. Medina has a earned income tax levy, which has been tried. It doesn't seem to be real popular, but I feel bad. Any school district now in this climate, they've been pushed by the state. They've been pushed by lower property values, and so they go back to the ballot. This is just a tough time.
Right.
Yeah, and Akron's is going to be 5.5 mils. Stowe's is 6.5. There's the 0.5% earned income tax, you said, Medina, so quite a few are even larger, but passing anything is going to be tough. Go ahead.
Well, even the 5.5 mils, that's very conditional on the fact that the Akron schools still have to cut their budget quite dramatically, just to fit that in. Because by rights, if they would have really asked for what they needed, it would have been probably almost in double digits, 9 or 10 or 12.
They're still going to close some schools and lay off
They
some
still
people.
are going to have to continue to cut back. So people are going to look at this and say, well, I passed this levy. Why are you continuing the cutbacks? Well, that's because it's only 5 mils.
Yeah, combination of cuts and a levy.
Exactly.
We will dissect that in the days to come. Larry, Stephanie, Steve, thank you so much, and thanks for being with us. Again, Jody Miller with a special on concealed carry coming up at 10. See you next Friday on Newsnight. Good night.